There are people who are educated and not making it about race. Canada needs to be more cultured and recognize the atrocity of what it's done in the past. I would argue that you can't be educated and not make it about race. I would argue that you can't be properly educated on what has happened, what is happening, and say that it doesn't have roots in racism. This entire comment is an oxymoron. If educated people are not making it about race, but Canada needs to be more cultured and recognize the atrocities, then it's about race. I mean this so kindly because I myself used to be in this seat of white privilege. I used to not use my platform to talk about racial issues. My account was at 70,000. And then you realize that that's a privilege that you have, that I have. Being white presenting, I have the privilege of when people see my videos, when they see my content, they assume I'm white, which means something to people. Unfortunately means that there's people that will take what I'm saying more seriously. You can't say that politics is not about race when Canada is built on marginalization and the residential schools. That's the entirety. When we talk about the United States, that's like saying their politics aren't tied into racism either. It's very clear that it's tied into racism. And there, the marginalization of not only Indigenous people, but the Black community. And in the United States of America, if you're a Black person, you're more likely to be incarcerated. You're more likely to be charged for crimes that you did not commit. You're more likely to receive harsher sentencing. And that holds true for Indigenous people in Canada. Statistically. And that is an issue within our government. It's inherently racist. That's why we have things like Starlight tours. That's why murdered and missing Indigenous women has been such an issue in Canada, but swept under the rug. It's why they didn't want to search landfills because it wasn't worth the resources to try and find the bodies of missing women. Thankfully, in Manitoba, they had a politician, Wab Kinew, who stepped up and said search the landfills, and lo and behold, they're finding unalived bodies of women, Indigenous women who are missing. This conversation is kind of what I'm describing when it comes to Alberta and the belief systems that come out of there. It's the overall privilege of looking and saying, yeah, people, social programmings and talking about these things and not realizing that Indigenous people make very little money statistically. I wrote a paper on it in university, so it's outdated and it's been a long time, but it was the average income for an Indigenous woman is $16,000 per year when I wrote this. And it was $18,000 for men. It is below minimum wage. It is below living standards. And that's because of racism. Not only do these communities not have running water, which has to do with our politics, but when they go into places, they experience extreme racism in hiring practices. Indigenous women, I'm Indigenous. I did not want to check that I was Indigenous on my hospital forms when I was giving birth. Do you know why? Because they're more likely to call CPS on you for no reason. They have been known when giving C-sections or doing anything that has to do with ovarian cysts, sterilizing Indigenous women without their knowledge or consent. It's from a very privileged place to say, and in my opinion, a very uneducated place to say that race and politics don't go together. There's a book, if you're open to it, called Me and White Supremacy. It's written by a Black woman, and it breaks down all of these things, and it's a workbook that helps you look at your internalized racism, because there's a lot of people who have these beliefs and patterns and thought processes that have been ingrained in them because inherently our system is built on racism. And if you don't do the work to deconstruct and continue to deconstruct, you'll say things like this.